Hello and welcome to World Talks with me, Ashim Kumar. The Pentagon has launched a major review of US forces in Europe as Washington pushes NATO allies to assume greater responsibility for the continent's defense. At the same time, questions are growing over delayed US military aid to Ukraine. Joining me is Velina Tchakarova. She's founder of FACE, a geopolitical consultancy. Velina, welcome back to TVP World. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for the invitation.
So tell me, Velina, this review of American forces in Europe. Give me the big picture. What's this all about?
Okay, first we shall start with the facts or what we know as of today. The Pentagon is going to examine which US forces, bases, and strategic enablers should remain in Europe. This is not a surprise. It has been expected. It's going to be a process which will last probably up to 6 months. And of course, we understand already the destination of this process. The direction is clear. That means that probably there will be less. Of course, what remains open is where exactly there will be less US forces or less US bases, as well as strategic enablers, and how quickly this US withdrawal from the old continent is going to happen. So the declared objective, of course, is to make Europe the primary provider of its conventional deterrence. That is what now the US is framing as NATO 3.0. The main argument is to go back to NATO 1.0 from the first Cold War. And if you remember some of the conversations we had in the past, we were already discussing the context of this new Cold War. Obviously, the US perspective here is that it might face not one, but two primary competitors, which are also entangled in a modus operandi of strategic coordination. Of course, I mean the Dragon Bear, China and Russia. And Europe has to take the primary responsibility for its future conventional defense when it comes to Russia. So there will be a split of tasks. Does this mean necessarily a complete US withdrawal from Europe? I argue by no means. Again, it's really about, first and foremost, the destination, the direction of the process. Yes, there will be less. Yes, there will be partial withdrawal, but there will be no complete withdrawal of the United States from Europe. And second important question I think many are asking themselves right now in Europe is, of course, about the future of the transatlantic alliance, whether there will be an end to NATO, what kind of transatlantic alliance this will be. And I think, again, the US will be sticking to the nuclear deterrence, will be still collaborating and taking responsibility when it comes to the nuclear deterrence of the old continent. However, Europe will have to speed up to boost, of course, all its defense industrial production capabilities to fill these gaps that will emerge, not necessarily this year. After the review, there will be a decision making, but certainly in the years to come.
Okay, well, I want to come back to Europe and Europe's level of preparedness and their plans for their future. But all these American assets that are leaving Europe, where are they going?
So first, as you are already observing, we are dealing with not three separate hotspots or three, meanwhile, I call them actually intertwined proxy wars. The one being in Ukraine since 24th of February 2022, the second being in Iran since 28th of February this year, 2026, the third one, and from American perspective, the most important one being centered around Taiwan, as well as the South China Seas, the China Sea, Tehran. So these are three intertwined hotspots where the United States will have to delegate, forces. We'll have to obviously refocus, re-emphasize, and of course the primary tactical interest right now, from American perspective again, lies in the securitization of the Western Hemisphere, their own backyard, as well as, of course, the linkage to the Indo-Pacific. Of course, right now, a big topic, as we know, is the continuation of the war in Iran, which is now entering the second half of the year. So we have been already in a framework of 6 months, and the war has no sight of ending. And obviously, again, here what I see is that it's not just about the redistribution of capabilities. The real danger I see is actually that this possible removal of capabilities from Europe towards, for example, tactically towards the Middle East, and in the long run towards the Indo-Pacific, will leave Europe with strategic gap in the short term, a gap that Europe cannot quickly replace when it comes to long-range strike capabilities, when it comes to strategic lift, when it comes to logistics, air defense, and intelligence.
Yes, but some countries, Velina, in Europe are doing better than others, are they not? We're talking about the 5% target that's been set for countries, and countries like Poland and others are quite close to it. Others are not so close, and of course, Secretary of Defence Pete Hegseth says, that this review will show some countries passing with flying colours and other countries failing. So overall, what does this mean for NATO countries, and what can be done to speed things up?
Yes. So you rightfully pointed out one of the problems is spending. So it's about the quantitative side of the issue, which is to increase defense spending. Meanwhile, the decision on 5% from GDP for defense spending has been shared among most of the European NATO members. Yes, we have several examples. Most recently, the example with the conflict between Trump and Spain. Again, when it comes to the increased budget for defense spending, moving from, let's say, 2% towards 3.5%, because out of the 5%, only 3.5% are actually meant for hard defense, what we call hard defense, and 1.5% is actually meant for critical infrastructure that is also missing, especially if you consider Central Eastern Europe and the lack of physical infrastructure to move, for example, weapon systems. So that is the one issue, the quantitative side. But then there is also the qualitative side, the interoperability side, the way how these capabilities will be pulled for the sake of European conventional deterrence. It's about the training of the brigades, the international brigades. It's about basically, I think that the biggest challenge will be a cohesive approach to, creating a European pillar of NATO, because right now there is no time for European Defense Union in the short term. So what you can do is actually using the framework of NATO and create and strengthen the European pillar within NATO. And I think that this necessitates more than just numbers. It's
right.
Not enough for European governments to spend and to say, okay, now I have instead of 3%, but how to pull these capabilities and how to fill the gaps that will be left by the American capacities that will be withdrawn. Of course, these are the two issues that we will be tackling in the short term.
Yes, agreed. And also, of course, with Ukraine's experience, they probably have a lot of know-how that they can share with countries to help them also to upgrade their defense industries. Velina Tchakarova, as always, thank you very much indeed for sharing your analysis with our audience, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. That brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.